Jamie, Vogue, Pippa, all turned in these performances that were super different from anything they've ever done before. I love being involved in something that manages to tell a very difficult story about trauma and violence against women.
You've worked on projects like The Batman and, of course, Apple TV's Shining Girls. For doing things like stunt coordination, what is the process like working with directors and the planning process for really kind of meticulously planning how a lot of stunts in these types of series or movies that you work in are kind of planned out ahead of time?
Well, it's cool. Definitely Shining Girls being an episodic. I worked with 3 different directors, and each one, Michelle McLaren, Elisabeth Moss, Dana Reed, each one of them had a slightly different style and approach to it. But the cool thing is they were, all of them really were down with collaborating. So we took ideas, and then I like to say, I have an idea and a solution. And so we'll pitch the idea, and then depending on how they want to see the scene, sometimes the actors have input as well. We come up with solutions to make it look awesome and make sure that we're telling the story that everybody wants to creatively.
That's awesome. What are some of the things that you have to think about when you're working on a TV series where you're on a limited time frame and you have to kind of coordinate these big projects together? What are some of the steps you do to kind of keep that on schedule, so you're not having to go back and do things like reshoots and whatnot?
You have to have a high tolerance for lack of sleep, and then after that you break down the script and come based on what they have, and I'm big on any of the main story points, and then creating the details around that story arc on what we're looking to introduce the story with, what we're doing for the climax, and then how we're getting out of that scene. And that's whether that was in Shining Girls, the huge World War I scene, leading it in and showing that action with our main storytellers, our principal actors, and then creating really cool shots that we can show major action with, that we can do in a repeatable way with our stunt performers.
On Shining Girls, episode 6, there was that war sequence, just a lot of moving parts, this big set piece. And there I was looking at it, there's all of the these smoke effects and stuff. That sounded like such a massive project to take on, especially in for a series like that. Was there anything specific or any cool strategies that you did to kind of organize having to manage all of these moving parts at once?
Definitely. Like you were alluding to as well, Elijah, unlike a film where we have a lot of prep time and the schedule stays very linear, we lost days that we were going to shoot this massive scene. Some of the things were scaled down, like not having trenches. And so in creating the elements to tell Harper's moment and any of that trauma, Dana and I ended up blocking it out. So it was essentially a oneer. It was all one element going in a linear direction, which also fell within the parameters of our location. If you do a turnaround on our location, it's a warehouse park. So you can only look in certain directions to tell the story. And in creating all those elements with the wipes and the effects, anytime you're doing a turn back or a forward or a back, in terms of the lens and the frame, you have a lot of moving parts that you have to be aware of. So in shooting the stunt rehearsal, the previs for it, we shot it all in one linear motion, and then had the moment when Harper interacts the other soldier, and then at that point, that's our cut, and we had to set cranes and high lines and all the rigging for him to turn around and then have the explosion that knocks him down and everything. So,
wow.
It created some challenging aspects that came out very, very successfully. I felt like everybody was very happy with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was a really cool scene to look at, and just the fact that it was all shot in such a short time is incredibly impressive. Then there was also the car crash scene in episode 6. You had to kind of put in a little bit of movie magic to kind of make happen. Was there a cool story behind that at all?
Just the initial pitch, because Dana is definitely a huge fan of doing anything practical that we can, as well as I said if we had certain parameters, we could do the car hit practically. But the second I saw the picture of the car, it's a tank. It's like it's an absolute no. There's a huge hood. There's hood ornaments. Even the glass was angled. So practical went out the window right away. And then I offered we could do it in pieces with our actor coming out into the street and turning, and then do a cut inside the car with our stunt performer on the hood already, and we'd accelerate, smash the glass, and then have them go rolling off. But it has to do with cuts in and out, and Dana didn't love that. And then the third option pitched, which I'm not a huge fan of, and ultimately we skipped as well, is doing it with like green screen pads and hitting a stuntman with it and then digitally replacing the car. But the one that we ultimately went with, that was also my second favorite, is doing it on a lock-off, where we shoot it in 3 elements with our performer going into the street on a clean and a turn and a react. And then I'm totally giving away the magic to this, but and then the second plate is the car coming in and going past the impact line with a huge screech. And then the third element is our stuntman overlapping the action and going flying out on a ratchet and hitting the ground.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and that it's awesome to hear, how these moving parts can just put together all of that and a little bit of digital effects in there at the same time. You've also worked on a more recently on a bigger project with the Batman, and I wanted to ask you what would you feel like is some of the bigger differences between working on a series like Shining Girls versus working on like a feature film? Is the process the same, or is it a lot different when you have feature length film?
So with the feature films, Elijah, the cool thing is that you do get most of your information up front, like the planning, the locations, the scheduling. You typically have storyboards, so you have a lot of information at your disposal to plan and prepare for it. And then there's minor things that change on the day. There's always moving parts, and then there's also the X factor that when the director sees something that he likes or doesn't like, we have to be ready to change on the fly. In general, with feature films, I know there's a lot of planning that goes into things ahead of time, but then also with the Batman, you kind of had to jump in and have extra safety precautions because of the global pandemic and everything. Was that a very different process, trying to accommodate a lot of the things that go on with having to do closed sets and whatnot for filming during that time? It absolutely created its own set of logistical challenges. Sometimes you'd lose guys, a day or 2 days before a shoot, and have to have replacements that were ready. Luckily, by that time, there was a lot of the processes were more refined, and they had remote locations and opportunities for people to test and get through the works pretty quickly. So yeah, it was yeah. It was its own extra layer of, you get home, you think you're set for your next day or your next 2 days, and ultimately things changed quite frequently. Do you have any advice for someone who would be wanting to maybe get their foot in the door in the industry, doing anything really within film or television, especially in the stunt department? Say someone wants to try to get into and one day be a stunt coordinator. Where would you suggest someone start at to try to get their foot in the door? So there's 2 separate approaches. If you're looking to become a stunt performer, I would say anything with a dance background, like work on choreography and moves. Live shows are great for high levels of repetition of frequently used stunt repetitions. if you want to become a stunt coordinator and have regular work, 'cause there's two sides of it. The creative side, shoot stuff and edit things so you understand what you're putting together and how you're transitioning your shots, and you'll be able to always have more than one approach to what your director is seeking out. But on the downside, you have to have a certain level of being highly organized. So being anal retentive and being able to handle the constant flux and change in our schedules, and what that creates in terms of demand on your time and how you can allocate that to be effective.
Right. Yeah. No, that's incredibly insightful. I'm definitely thinking that there's a lot of people out there who, you know, would love to follow in your footsteps and one day be able to work on some of the projects in the way that you've been able to. This has been an incredible experience getting to chat with you. The first season of Shining Girls is available on Apple TV to stream.
Yep.
Is there anything exciting you're currently working on that you can talk about, or not yet? Nothing you can say yet?
Oh no, so I finished the end of the year on Iron Mike, which was a pretty cool opportunity. We did a lot of fights. We did a huge prison riot, and then I did the Shy at the beginning of the year, and then I just started Power Book Force, which is the Stars show, and this is action, which I definitely I don't mind it. I love my job either way. I definitely, it's not lost on me that I get to go and play pretend on most of the days, and so yeah, we're doing some pretty fun stuff on that show right now.
That's great. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. It was great to get to meet you, and I think this is gonna be really insightful for a lot of people out there.
Thanks for your time, Elijah. I really appreciate you.
Thanks so much.